We talk about the glory and the glamour.
Of course, to see a song like Uniachi pick up to some reasonable popularity.
But nobody talks about the early days of consecration.
How can you succeed unless you have failed first? I militated against God, even wrote music against God.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the life of Sir Reuben Kigame.
How can you ever say God is a healer unless you are first sick?
Hello and how are you? I am Alan Gitao, the Bench Conversations podcast host, and today we are engaging on a conversation that not only excites me but humbles me in every way. Now, the guest that you're having today on set is an author, a teacher, a journalist, a gospel musician, a social activist, a publisher, and also someone interested in leadership and governance. Now, to bring everything into context, this is someone who has graced our lives, especially the members of the body of Christ. We have been graced and blessed in every way by the music that he has always written and composed and also presented. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, every person watching us today, allow me to make welcome Sir Reuben Kigame.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you so much. I must say that this is a very humbling moment for me. For you accepting our invite and just accepting to sit down with us and talk even to the people who are watching us today.
No, not a big deal. I love to have conversations. I love to meet people, and I'm excited especially to have conversations with young people. And so I appreciate what you're doing on this podcast and what you're doing to impact society. So truly, I'm the one who is grateful that you invited.
Thank you so much, sir. And I want us maybe to begin this conversation because today we are talking about legacy. And I really believe that legacy is not something that is built up in one day. It is something that begins from a certain point in time. And having you as someone who is not only impacted people but also continues to inspire people, I want us to begin right where your journey began by first of all telling us who is Reuben Kigame, then take us from the very beginning.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So part of it you have already highlighted because I wear very many hats. I'm not sure whether I am a master of all of them, but I try my hands at so many different things in order to serve the Lord and serve His people with the gifts and talents and abilities that He has given to me. So Reuben Kigame was born in the mid-60s, actually in 1966, back in Vihiga County of Western Kenya. But I describe myself as a real Kenyan because I went to school then in Kisumu and in Kiambu and Nairobi, a little bit in the States. Got married from Kirinyaga and now make my home in Uasin-Gishu County. So where would you pin me? I am a real Kenyan, and more than that, I love the Lord with all of my heart. I've been a Christian since I was a teenager. Back in 1982, I made a radical commitment to follow Christ, to be His disciple, and for Him to be my Lord and mentor. And ever since, I have had, of course, ups and downs, but I have really never quite regretted being a Christian. And I've had many questions in life. I don't want to ever paint the picture that it's been rosy and easy, and that when you come to Christ, you sort of have ice cream every day. No, it has been up and down, but the beauty of it is that Christ has been such a consistent friend and mentor. And he has given me direction in writing through the Bible, but also daily through his Holy Spirit. And so this is Reuben Kigame. What you see is what you get. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being part of this conversation today. And I now want us to get to this point where did your ministry begin? Because today every person sees the glamour, the glory of the ministry, but maybe not many people know where did Reuben Kigame begin.
So to understand where my ministry begins, you need to understand how I became a Christian, because there is an antithesis to it. There is a negation. In other words, I was not born a Christian. I was not born a disciple of Christ. It's an event. It's something that happened when I was 16. But prior to this, I was a rebel. I mean, I did not want anything to do with Christianity. I hated Christianity. In fact, I saw Christianity as a system of do's and don'ts. Yeah, laws and Mungu hataki ufanye hivi, hataki ufanye vile, That is how I saw Christianity. I also saw God as someone who has favorites, almost like a segregationist. I thought that any God who can allow some people to see and then deny me visual ability by allowing me to be blind, then was not a fair God. And so I militated against God, even wrote music against God. And because I didn't like Christianity. Also, I thought that God was what you call a cosmic killjoy. He waits for when you're having fun and then, stop. Someone who was not interested in people's freedoms, always, curtailing their operations. So, who would want a God like that? But you see, that was my perception, that was my understanding of God at that time, until I heard the gospel. And the gospel I had was very simple but profound. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Whosoever is the word that really hit. So it meant that God did not have favorites, that I could qualify, that I would be his child, just like anybody else. That my visual disability was not an issue, and so he didn't have favorites. So I made a choice, a very conscious choice to follow him. And then the other thing I understood was that God wanted a relationship with me, regardless of who I was and what I had done and all of that. You see, he was willing to forgive any kind of sin or rebellion. But I heard from Revelation 3:20, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hears my voice and opens the door, I'll come in and dine with him and he with me. So God wanted relationship. And so I understood the gospel for the first time as a gospel of relationship with God, my maker, but also a gospel that was inclusive. You see, so that radically changed me. And so my walk with Christ has been around relationship with God, as well as making sure that everybody knows that God doesn't segregate, that God doesn't choose, that he is the most inclusive, the most democratic, if you like it. Yeah.
All right. So now, maybe now to tell us, at what point in time did you now know that I have been called into the ministry of singing actually because there are many hats that you do carry,
Right.
but then there is this one that maybe many people do know about,
Yeah.
the ministry of music. Now, when did you come to that realization that I do have this thing and I really have to
Yeah.
follow it up?
So I don't think there is like a special day I can recall when God came and said, "Now, Reuben, I want you to start doing music, or I want you to start being an activist, or I want you to start being a broadcast journalist." No, 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 no. It's a very gradual journey of discovery. You see, the Christian walk is about God taking your hand and showing you daily, this is the way, walk in it. It's a discovery. You don't see everything at once. So I never imagined, for example, that I would be even when I came to Christ. I never imagined, therefore, I want to be a gospel artist and write all these many albums. No, 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 no. And I have never seen my ministry of music that way, for example. I've always seen it as obedience to God. He shows me what to write, when to write, and how to write it with regard to music, for example. And so I don't go the commercial way of, I've not released an album for a while, so maybe it's time to release one. Or time ifika ya kutoa ngoma kali. You don't, I have never seen it that way. And I don't ever want to see it because it's a journey. So you'll find that I release an album or a song, and it will take a year before another one, sometimes months, sometimes weeks, sometimes years. There are albums that have gaps of 5 to 7 years. I've just released my 30th album, and the 29th. Well, the 30th was released in. Let me check that. All right. I have just released my 30th album this last April. The one before that, the 29th, was released in 2019. So you see that gap. Yeah. It's not as if I've not been writing music. In between, I've written singles and so on. But there is always a prompting. It's time to release another album. Now, when it comes to something like my calling towards teaching, it is something I'm trained in. So I'm a trained teacher. My first degree at Kenyatta University is in education. Now, education arts then becomes both a career or profession, but also a ministry. So I taught at Mary Hill High School. Currently, I teach at the Africa International University. So that is a career calling, so to speak, where God takes your profession and utilizes it. I'm also a trained journalist, so I went to Moy University for my Master of Science in journalism and mass media, mass communication. And much as it's a hobby, I had worked with different media houses for a long time. Radio Citizen, Family, Radio Now, Radio 316, Biblia Husema Broadcasting, Hope Media, I'm actually one of the founders of Hope FM. And I run my own media house in Eldoret called Fish Media. So there is a hobby or passion side of it. But I've gone to school and I understand mass media very well and communication generally. What I'm trying to say is that God then takes a career like that and utilizes it. So I bring my professionalism into Christian media. Yeah, I do consultancy and so on. I help people to start stations, train, etc. But that is where God takes what you are going to school for and utilizes it. Issues of social activism are a matter of experience and traveling. Traveled to Europe and the United States and other parts of Africa, and encountered scenarios of social contestation and issues of social needs and matters of justice and so on. But I'm also read in the area. I'm just finishing my PhD in music and social justice. So I'm very passionate about matters justice and rights and so on. And so I've read a lot around it. So you see how academics are taken over by God, and He uses them for ministry as well. And you could say that of my apologetics, the books I've written and so on. If you look at this book, this is Christian Apologetics through African Eye. It's 486 pages that show how Christians can have conversations with other people. So there is a scholarly side of it, but there is a ministry side to it as well. If you take this other one, Essays in African Christianity and Theology, this is about 380 or so pages, and it focuses mostly on essays around things I have researched, at school. And I'm contesting that Christianity is actually an African faith at par with any other religion, if you are dealing with religion, but it's more than religion, a lot of that. And then you have this other one. So this is like a collection of all the songs I've written since 1982 to the present. But what is my point? And you could even look at this. That's a magazine I used to publish called Music Times. So the point I'm making is that God takes your scholarship and academics, or takes your profession, and directs you on how to utilize it for His glory. And so I could say so many things about each of those. I could say a lot about even my desire to provide leadership for Kenya, which badly needs what I would call value-based, accountable servant leadership. And I come to that out of traveling around the world, going to school, reading heavily around issues of leadership and governance and justice and rights and how to impact lives of people. And so I believe that God has given me some answers to the perennial questions that we deal with every day. So, in short, what I can just say is that I burn my life for God and the people. My life oscillates around honoring God, glorifying God, serving His purpose, and then loving people, reaching out. As summarized in what Jesus would say, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself.
So how did your early days look like in your ministry? It's so amazing that we can be able to see the amazing work that you are doing in all the facets that you've mentioned. But I would also like my audience to understand. We can be able to see the glory. We can be able to see the perfection. Media, journalism, social activist, musician. We can be able to see all that. But somebody somewhere is starting off a journey, and they really want so bad to be at this point. Maybe if at all we can be able to paint for us a picture. How did the early days look like?
So like I said, it is. It's not something that is instant. It's a gradual process, and God takes your hand and leads you through different cycles of life. You make your mistakes, you succeed, you get bruised. There is no leader, there is no artist, there is no scholar, there is no journalist that I know that has not gone through ups and downs. So for me, ministry-wise, it began with my salvation journey, the conversion, and then involvement in the different aspects in high school. So, for example, I had a music team that I started that was called the Ambassadors, made of students mostly. I had, even within the group, some of the people you may know, like Mary Atieno, um, Ken Kifinji, and a couple of people that have passed on to glory. So I led that for about 4 to 5 years because those days high school took 6 years. So having gotten saved in Form 1 headed to Form 2 and all the way to Form 6. So I was actively involved in that. And then there was another music group called the Starlights that was a little more liberal, that we both Christian and patriotic, friendly, secular stuff. So I was involved in both. So you grow by participation. I was the leader of the ambassadors, so I did a lot of songwriting, and we traveled to different schools and colleges under the patronage of a Salvation Army captain called Walumbe, Henry Walumbe. So Walumbe really noticed the leadership in me, and he gave me opportunities to speak and teach and preach in the different schools. And that then gave way to my university days when I joined Kenya Youth for Christ and participated in their music activities, their clubs, and then traveling around the country to colleges and high schools. So we combed that right into a twin ministry that was taking place in Nairobi called Bigute Nachricht. It's a German-originated outreach group. They travel around with these big lorries, blue and white, old German army trucks. So we combed the country, went to every part of Kenya, preaching the gospel with stands in marketplaces, spend nights sometimes in manyatas or under the truck in tents and so on.
Wow.
So we traveled a great deal around the country and sometimes into Uganda and Tanzania. And so there was a progressive involvement. By the time I finished university and I'm working, I then, of course, embarked on a more self-directed ministry journey. So I started a group that we call Jubilee. And, initially it was called Operation Zion. So some people thought it was not a good name. They thought we were a bunch of Rastafarians. So we dropped that and took up the name Jubilee. And Jubilee sort of translated eventually into what we were calling Operation. We're calling Victory Sound. Excuse me, Victory Sound. So we released an album around the 1991, 92. Victory Sound. That was in terms of group dynamics, maybe the first major production. But prior to that, I had released 2 albums. My first album was released in 1987, What a Mighty God We Have. The second one was released in Germany in 1988, called No Setting Sun, mostly in English. Actually, the 2 albums were in English. So in 1992 into 93, I released another solo album called The End of Time. And then 1993, 94, I released another one called Another Country. Now, so Victory Sound then metamorphosed into what was now called Friends of Reuben Kigame. And by this time, I have resigned from the Teacher Service Commission, and I'm going into, a self-directed, not quite self-directed, but more of a solo pursuit, because the systems that were there at that time were not able to accommodate what I wanted to do. For example, I wanted a more radical engagement with society. And most churches, most ministries were very critical of engaging with what you would define as the secular world. You see, my understanding of the gospel is taking the good news to those who don't have it. And so wherever there is wherever there is darkness, that is where I want to go. So maybe you can begin to understand how everyone around me says politics is dirty. Don't go into it. Don't. I say if it's dirty, then it needs cleaning. Doesn't it?
Yeah, sure.
So how do you live with that? You just can't keep complaining. It's dirty. It's dirty. So I say, wherever there is the greatest darkness, that is where I want to go with my light. Because Jesus said, "You're the light of the world." A city built on a hill cannot be hid. I don't want to hide my faith, so I go there as a radical, non-compromising. I believe in what I call storming the darkness. Tafuta mahali giza iko, now we, stomp it. Maliza giza. So I am always excited to rock the boat. I'm always nikipata vitu vimepangwa hivi, I always want to pangua. And as long as kama hii kuna darkness hapa, nitapangua mpaka niingize mwanga. So I've recently written a song on my latest album that's called Ujumbe. Ujumbe, sisi ni chumvi, ujumbe, sisi ni mwanga, sisi tunaleta nuru kwa ulimwengu wa giza. Tuna deal na mambo ya uchafu na kuganga na yale ambayo yanahitaji uganguzi. So that is something I believe with all of my heart. You can't move without that. Hata nibaki peke yangu, bado nitaenda tu. So that's why in a sense nita confess that I don't fit very much in systems of limitation. There are people who say, you're blind one. And that's slow. I say, as long as I'm able to move, I'll move very fast. Yes. And so I don't agree with some of the church positions. Like, for example, with music, that there are styles that are for God and some are not for God. Like they're reserved for the devil. The devil has nothing.
That's true.
Everything belongs to God. So if it is good, if it is pure, if it is wholesome, the things that Paul says in Philippians, as long as there is something nice and godly or acceptable, then I'll do it. So I've been ostracized right from my college days for writing reggae songs. I attempted rap fairly early, and we're some of those that pushed the African gospel music into contemporary genres. Tuliambiwa msifanye hivyo, and even initially we were told you should not use certain instruments, don't use drums.
So at this time, it's in the early days of your music career still.
This, you see, I grew up in that environment. So, for example, growing up as a teenager, people liked 4-part arrangements in music, choirs, big choirs, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So the solo stuff or solo music or solo careers were not popular here. So you had Machakos Town Choir, you had Kakamega Town Choir, you had Mwanza Town Choir, you had those choir. We came and did that and began to have smaller groups and bands. You see, a lot of young people were running away from the church and going to clubs to look for band music. So I asked myself, what is really wrong about band music? The only wrong thing can be the message. So we did what we call redeem the art, redeem the industry. Use guitars, use drums, use trumpets, saxophones, use contemporary lyrics and stuff, poetry, but make sure it is centered on God and it is clean, it edifies, ukisikiza unabaki unasikia sawa. So if I look back now, I say it was hard work, but it worked. Ukiona mayouth wana rap na kufanya spoken word and so on, there's a price we paid. Kuna gharama tulilipa. Yeah. And it was not easy. I've done seminars in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, so Ethiopia. Even one time went into Eritrea. Doing all kinds of things. South Africa. Yes. Pulling the gospel to where it needs to be, according to how I see it from the word.
Wow, that is so nice. Actually, what I was so keen to listen to that journey of how you evolved from the beginning days of ministry to a point where now you are in. And I would like also now to understand, because I know a journey is a journey where we go up the mountain and also at times down the valley. I would like to know, at what point during this journey you felt you are at your lowest, or you felt maybe something that you're really trying to do is totally not working?
Yeah. That one, I've been there so many times, and I would dare say that it is unimaginable for me thinking of success without failure. In fact, let me put it this way. How can you succeed unless you have failed first?
All right.
So, even the kind of gospels that are going around, for example, that as Christians we should be prosperous, we should always be healthy, and if you are sick, you don't have enough faith, there's all that rubbish being taught around. Those are gospels from hell, because the Bible doesn't portray anything like that. But even logic, simple logic would bring you to the point where you ask, how can you ever say God is a healer unless you are first sick? What is he healing? He doesn't heal whole people. You have to be sick first. So there are times you'll be sick. How does he provide? How can you call God Jehovah Jireh, my provider, unless you have lack? You see? So this nonsense of the Christian will never see bad days or will never get sick is totally rubbish, and it's not from the Bible. So the greatness of God sometimes is manifested by the contrast of those valleys, the hard times. But I'm sure you've heard me. Maybe you've heard one of my translations. In 2019, we translated the song "God of the Mountains." God of the Mountains is still God in the valleys. And I brought it home in Swahili. bado Mungu bondeni, you know. And then I say Mungu mchana, bado Mungu usiku. So the interesting thing is that God never changes. So if you're in the valley, ako hapo na wewe.
That's very true.
You succeed up there, he's there with you. You see? Ukichomoka kidogo uanguke kando, he's there. So he's the ever-present God, all-knowing. Who is like our God? So some of the valleys, of course, include the issue of looking for a job. The many young people that are tamaking have been there. But the difference between your tamaking and mine is because mine is based on bias. Yeah. So you go, like one time after Form 6, I mean, people were being hired to teach even after Form 4 as untrained teachers, what we call UTs. Now I have finished Form 4, I've finished Form 6, and I wanted to be a UT. The principal of this particular school asked me to go and bring her father. Her father has not been Christ, was I think going to be with the Lord now, but had not been Christ. So why should I go and bring my father? I'm the one who wants the job. What I didn't know is that he didn't believe I could teach, and that was born in the question he asked me. So how will you see the blood flow and stuff like that? Even today, if I tell people that I teach at the university, so there is that bias, and so I've missed a lot of opportunities. And you would think that that is only in the secular world. Even within the church, I have been denied a lot of opportunities. And then you have, I mean, one time, let me just give you an example. I had been a radio journalist and broadcaster, even ran my own radio station for years, and they were hiring a manager at one of the Christian stations. I applied. I didn't get it. Yeah. Yeah. And to this day, they have never gotten back to me to even say why. There was a time I applied at one of the universities, teach. I took the interview. I was told I did well. Those were one of those who never got the job. One time, they wanted someone in Wasingishu County government to be part of a board. And so it had to do with agriculture and mechanization. I mean, I came out the best. Did I ever get the job? No. I mean, the position? No. So there have been those low moments. And if there is a young person who thinks Kigame has always had it nice, there have been some tough times work-wise. And then, of course, during the COVID season, we had everything shut down. So as a musician, we could not perform in public. And you know what happens with the music industry. Sometimes you have all these albums, all this music, you put it out there, then somebody comes and takes all your income. And like the Music Copyright Society of Kenya, one of the worst organizations in this country. So I've had those cases. That's why I'm also into social justice and activism, because the musicians that make the music earn peanuts, like when they did the last payments, they paid less than 10% of what they collected. So where's the 90%? So you have those kinds of challenges as a musician. And then, of course, as a person, because of the family, I lost my first wife to a road accident. And that was probably the toughest, the most difficult time of my life. So just getting back on my feet again was quite a chore. Yeah, and of course, one of the most recent is uh, wanting to run for elections. I actually was overqualified, if you ask me, for the 2022 presidential seat. But a few people using the IEBC ensured that I was not on the ballot. Yeah. So, of course, as a human being, you want to ask God to look for a machine gun and kill Chebukati and the IEBC officials. But as a Christian, you realize that there is a divine script. God permits certain things and delays or slows down others. So you end up accepting Kesho pia ni siku. Yeah, and you have to exercise forgiveness. That was the hardest thing, especially in the political race. But you don't give up. I mean, even others have been through that. People like Raila have tried the presidency several times. You have people like Uhuru Kenyatta. He didn't become the president the first time. So you have those challenges and learning that life is about ups and downs and picking up lessons from the downs. That's a very important lesson to learn. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Then we have talked about the lowest moment. What about that highest moment in your life? Those days that you look back and you say, God really did something during this particular time.
Yeah, the first one is that I got married. That was a high moment. I've been married twice. I got married the first time in 1991. And, I lived with my wife for 15 years. That was a great time. And we married. Another great time with Julie. Those were great moments. Then, as a teacher, I have really enjoyed my students, both at Mary Hill High School, Madeira School, also at the Africa International University. I really have enjoyed my teaching career. The students just give me a high, so I feel really nice. And seeing so many out there in different professions and so on, it's something very, very nice. And then, of course, making it to 30 albums.
Congratulations.
It's not a mean thing, but it's a great thing, one of the other high moments. Oh yeah, I'm wearing this. This is a medal that was awarded to me in this little It's awarded to me by the late President Kibaki in 2010. It's a state commendation that's called the Order of the Grand Warrior, and he awarded that to me for thank you for my contribution in the area of media and music. So, I mean, you do your thing, and other people will recognize, and commend you. I really admire Kibaki. I mean, I met him face to face maybe just twice, but I'd been a keen follower and admirer and supporter of Kibaki. And so when he did that, it's not because we sat down and he asked me questions. So, wewe fanya mambo yako, somebody will recognize one. And of course, to see a song like Uniachi pick up to some reasonable popularity, where it is sung in state house, it is sung in churches, in homes, in cars. I must tell you a hilarious situation recently. Someone wrote on Facebook, I think she is called Lydia. She wrote on Facebook and said she was traveling to Kakamega, and so the radio began to play Uniachi, and then the driver began to sing. then everybody in the matatu began to
Wow.
sing. So when the Lord gives you such information, you just say, Lord, who am I that you would give me for such a great ministry? I mean, that is a powerful sight. I told her you should have taken a video of that. So there are many. I could mention many. I mean, the blessing of children, the blessing of grandchildren. I have four children and four grandchildren. The blessing of friends. The days I had books published. The day we first went on air with the radio station, after I put it up, if you look behind you, there is a tower there. So, life has had its bad times, but I've also enjoyed some really wonderful times. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.